Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. President Trump announced this afternoon that the United States will be pulling out of the Paris Agreement. That's an international agreement intended to combat global warming by reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. We're getting out. I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
Wow, that did it. The left immediately became hysterical, even more than usual. Keep in mind that this was a non-binding, unenforceable agreement whose effects, even if every nation involved followed the agreement to the letter, cannot be known with any precision. It doesn't matter. The world just ended, literally, as they say. Billionaire Democratic donor Tom Steyer described Trump's decision as, quote, assault and battery on the future of the American people. CNN warned its viewers to expect mass extinctions, flooding in the streets of New York City, the physical annihilation of the Marshall Islands. The ACLU, meanwhile, somehow concluded that leaving the agreement was, and this is a quote, a massive step back for racial justice and an assault on communities of color. Didn't explain how. And then there was cable news. My gosh, the long faces, the grave intonations, the florid and outraged proclamations. It was like somebody died. Millions of them, actually.
On a sunny day in the Rose Garden, what could be defined and construed as a dark speech.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world.
I have such rage and sadness. We just watched a dangerous little man give a very, very scary speech.
One of the most bleak depictions of America's role in the world as environmental partners.
So he is not helping the forgotten American. He is hurting them. Their kids will have worse asthma in the summer. The president who talked about putting America first has now put America last.
Well, we're no longer obviously talking about science here. What you're watching is a priesthood defending its faith. The essence of science, meanwhile, is skepticism that's relentlessly testing what you think you know to make certain you actually know it. The people who ran the space program didn't know everything, and they knew it. That's not happening here. It's not allowed. Press for explanations as to what they're talking about, and you're attacked as immoral, a denier. The matter is settled. Every word immutable and holy. Questions equal apostasy. Shut up and believe. The irony is that almost none of the religious figures you saw sermonizing on television today actually know much about the Paris Agreement beyond the bullet points they've been handed by their producers 10 minutes before. What's in it? Do they have any idea? And if so, why haven't they told us till now? Before today, most of the people you just saw spent far more time yammering about Clockboy and transgender bathrooms than about climate accords. So what is in the agreement? Well, there are a lot of things in the agreement, and a few of them are worth knowing. First, if the U.S. were to stick with this accord, we'd be pledging to cut our greenhouse gas production by at least 26% below the levels it was in 2005. That's a big reduction. And it's not expected of China, India, or other huge polluting countries who, by the way, happen to be our chief economic rivals. Under the Paris Agreement, rich nations like the United States agree to send $100 billion to poorer countries every year starting in 2020 to aid with their transition to green energy. President Obama pledged $3 billion to this fund. China, meanwhile, has not pledged a cent, the world's biggest polluter. In fact, China is likely to receive some of this money. Keep in mind the Chinese economy is predicted to overtake our economy in less than a year from right now, but somehow we ought to subsidize their energy production? That is lunacy. It's masochism. You've already guessed how we're supposed to pay for all of this, higher energy costs here. Americans would pay more for gas, more for electricity, more in taxes, all in the name of meeting obligations that other countries don't have to meet. If you want to know how all of this might end, look across the Atlantic. European electricity, and some people actually care what it costs, there costs 3 times as much as it does here, and the prices are rising faster there as well. Despite all of this, even supporters of the agreement concede, the ones who actually know what's in it, there aren't many, that it won't come close to stopping global warming even if everyone abided by the terms. Now, there are counter-arguments to this, of course, in favor of the treaty. There always are, and some of them are legitimate. That's the point. This is a debate. It's a big deal. A lot is at stake for Americans who, by and large, know nothing of the details. Shouldn't Congress have a chance to debate this and vote on it like they're supposed to? Actually, they already had that chance. It came in 2009. President Obama had a Democratic House and a Senate supermajority that year. The people now telling you that global warming is an existential threat to the world, that everyone will die if we don't get a handle on it, had more power at that moment than at any time since the New Deal in the 30s. And they could have done something about global warming openly and democratically. Did they? No. They focused on passing the stimulus package, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank. Well, since that year, American voters have consistently elected majorities for whom global warming is not a priority. Because outside of affluent pockets and a relatively small number of zip codes, global warming itself is not a top priority for the American public, not even close. Maybe it should be, but it's not. And that's how democracy works. The public gets to decide what is most important. Now, the people in charge disagree with it. They don't care what voters think. They lost interest in democracy a long time ago, and they're no longer hiding that fact. They don't believe you should be consulted before they change your life forever, and mostly they don't bother to consult you. Except today, for once they didn't get their way, and of course they're hysterical about it. Maybe now they'll have to make a real argument on behalf of what they believe before imposing it by force on you. And that's the way the system is supposed to work. Philip Levine is part of the system. He is a former Hillary Clinton surrogate. He's the mayor of Palm Beach, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Mayor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Miami Beach, Tucker.
Miami Beach. Oh, did I say Palm Beach?
You said Palm Beach, and I love Palm Beach, but Miami Beach is where it's at.
I have Mar-a-Lago on the mind. Excuse me. So,
you mean that new water park in the future?
So look, you're concerned about rising sea levels. I'm not here to argue that's not a concern. Or the details of climate science, because I'm agnostic about it. I'm just wondering how this specific agreement sending
The water levels have gone up dramatically. We, of course, moved forward to raise our roads, put in pumps, change our building codes. And it's not because we're so excited to have to do that, but we have to do it for survival of our city. And it's not just Miami Beach. It's coastal cities all over the world.
Okay.
Hey, Tucker, I heard what you had to say, but I got to tell you something. When the world's leading scientists are telling you this is what's going on, I mean, and some of the smartest minds in the world are telling you this is the reason why, at some point you have to listen.
Yeah, you're actually dodging my question completely, and I'm not denying the existence of sea level rise. I'm merely asking a very specific policy question, because this is about policies. How will the terms of the Paris Agreement, specifically handing $3 billion a year to India and China, which do not have to lower their emissions in the rest of this generation, how will that help what's going on in Miami Beach, the things you just described?
Tucker, the bottom line is, as the world is getting too hot and too warm, the oceans are rising, and that's affecting Miami Beach, and it's affecting all coastal cities. We must cool the globe down.
I can't let you dodge it again, okay? Because at the end, specifics make the difference. It is dodging, and I'm asking you about a very specific agreement that you and everyone else on the left is beating their chests about, and Trump is destroying the world. Okay, fine, I'm open-minded. Tell me how that specific agreement and the financial arrangements in it will help the problems you describe.
And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I'm not the guy from the left, and the one thing I can tell you is this. I'm in that radical center. I call myself a radical centrist. And the bottom line is rising oceans aren't Republican and they're not Democrat. So what does an agreement do? An agreement puts the world together in an alignment, and says, we have a problem. Let's work together and solve the problem. I mean, Tucker, let's just say for the slight chance, what about for the slight chance, Tucker, all the world scientists and some of these great minds, let's just say maybe they're right. If they are, maybe it's a good idea if we do something about it.
So what you're saying is you're not bothering. Hold on. What you're saying, you're describing religious faith. You're saying I don't have to bother to learn any of the details about a very specific agreement that we're all mad about today, because there are people whose names I don't know who think it's a good idea. And my question to you is, why wouldn't the average person say, hey, I'm open-minded, but why don't you give me some specifics and tell me more, win me over, don't force me to participate, explain it to me. It's a democracy after all, right? Isn't it?
No question it's a democracy. And you know what? It's an American democracy. And truthfully, it's a world democracy. And as you can imagine, we used to be the leader in that free world democracy. And I think really today, I got to tell you, what Fareed Zakaria said, and I heard you say, it's kind of right. We gave up leadership.
Man, I thought you guys believed in science. Why don't you give me why don't you tell me why allowing China to take a pass on reducing its greenhouse emissions for years is going to reduce global warming and its effects. I don't understand. What's the answer?
But the fact of the matter is, think about it, Tucker. China signed this agreement. Europe signed it. India signed it. Everyone's in it together to make the globe a better place, to reduce these emissions. And, I mean, come on. You're talking about going through...
Is there a single person watching this show stupid enough to be convinced by what you are saying? I'm open-minded. I want you to convince me that the Paris Agreement is a good thing, will reduce global warming, and you're not even trying.
Almost every mayor in America now has come together and say we're going to adhere to those protocols.
Is that really your argument?
No question.
Like other people are doing it, therefore it's a good idea?
And we know to, Tucker. Come on.
Large groups of people have been in favor of some really crazy things over the years. Don't you owe your constituents, the public, the obligation of explaining in clear, simple terms specifically how the terms of this agreement will achieve the goal
Tucker,
you say they will?
The terms are very clear. If you all come together and you reduce your greenhouse emissions and you lower the temperature of the world, that the waters will stop rising. That is a global agreement.
But that's not what this agreement says.
But
that's not what it says.
Of course it does, Tucker.
But why
does it goes?
But it actually doesn't. And I sense I know more about it perhaps than you do. But just last question. You may be totally right, and I'm not denying that you are, because I'm not a denier. But if that's true, if reducing emissions will prevent the seas from rising, then why not require India and China and the world's other biggest polluters to do that? This agreement doesn't do that.
And I believe the fact that and Tucker, it does. It brings everybody together. But one thing I learned with the president's comments today, what he said about Pittsburgh, it's funny because the mayor of Pittsburgh is a friend of mine who doesn't agree with this, but what's incredible, I didn't realize that Ohio and Pittsburgh doesn't get affected by climate change. To me, it was an interesting thing. I just learned it.
You're making me more nervous than I was when this segment began. But Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your coming on. It was game of you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Hillary Clinton's 2016 excuse tour continued today. She spoke tonight at the Javits Center in New York City. If the name of that place sounds familiar, there's a reason. That's the place Clinton abandoned her supporters on election night. She didn't even bother to show up after she failed to win. Instead, she sent John Podesta out to send her sobbing fans home. Well, 7 months later, Clinton finally showed up. What does she have to say? Well, initially, she suggested she was ready to take some responsibility for losing.
Is the really painful experience of honestly understanding, what I didn't do well or what I didn't do well enough or what our shortcomings were, where we, missed an opportunity, where we didn't do, in retrospect, what might have worked better.
But then, nope. She went right back to the Russian conspiracy.
Obviously, I'm particularly concerned about the role that Russia played and the very serious interference that we know they were responsible for in our most fundamental democratic act. You can't be all right with the idea that a foreign adversary was trying to influence the outcome of our election.
But it wasn't just secret Macedonian agents who derailed her God-given job as president. It was, of course, sexism.
In my book, I take on the issues of sexism and misogyny and talk about it because we need to pull it out and put it in the bright light. And it may be uncomfortable for some people to read how I experienced it, what I believe about it, but I think that's a conversation we need to have.
Hillary also did nothing to back off from her comments yesterday when she began spouting full-blown conspiracy theories about how the Trump campaign masterminded a Russian effort to destroy her.
The Russians, let's say WikiLeaks, same thing, dumped the John Podesta emails. My email account was turned into, the biggest scandal since Lord knows when. They covered it like it was Pearl Harbor. Men got paid for the speeches they made. I got paid for the speeches I made. And it was used, and I thought it was unfairly used. I have my complaints about former Director Comey.
Well, think about the rap you've heard endlessly against the president. He's narcissistic. He won't accept information he disagrees with. He's disconnected from reality. He betrays friends and allies for his own personal gain. Based on what you just saw and her behavior these last few weeks, do any of these criticisms not apply to Hillary Clinton? Be honest with yourself. She can't accept explanations for her defeat that center on her own strategy. So like a Soviet commissar, she searches for wreckers who sabotaged her. She's so detached from reality, she's accusing the Trump campaign of ordering specific hacking efforts to the minute and provides no evidence. And she's so narcissistic, the only person she can't blame for her defeat is herself, when even her biggest handicaps were, of course, self-inflicted. Charles Krauthammer is a writer and columnist, and he joins us now. It does sound like the critique people make of Trump.
Look, I know I'm in a minority here among conservatives, but I actually feel sorry for her.
I do too. I agree.
I have a soft spot. It could be because I was in my youth a liberal.
Yes.
I retain the marshmallow deep inside my heart that I try not to betray these days. But it's a pathetic performance. Yeah. It's sort of childish. She obviously can't accept responsibility. She's practiced at this, where she says, I love in one of her riffs, she said, was I a perfect candidate? No. Did I make mistakes? Yes. As if these are rhetorical devices. Whoever said she was a perfect candidate, she was a terrible candidate. She was the worst, the worst imaginable. She had all the advantages. Why? Just look at the fact that she couldn't shake the challenge of a 74-year-old socialist who, this is the best part about Bernie Sanders, honeymooned in the Soviet Union. She couldn't shake his challenge for 6 months. By the way, Lindsey Graham once said about Bernie in the Soviet Union, yes, and he never left. That was her challenge. She couldn't. And she had the DNC behind her. She complained about the DNC being against her. It's not delusional. This is losing an election, losing something you've been after for 8 years, probably 16 years, is pretty hard. And I think her handlers or somebody who cares for her should have said, don't go out there. You wait a few more years, people will mellow to you. They won't remember details. Maybe they'll have some affection for you. For Michael Dukakis, for Walter Mondale. These are people who weren't who didn't elicit the same kind of antipathy she does, because they didn't wallow in self-pity.
And anger, and it comes off, and I understand the disappointment. For sure, she put a lot on the line, and she lost, and you can understand her grave disappointment.
She lost twice.
But this is not helpful to the Democratic Party, which needs to think through why they lost, and she's making it pretty hard to do that.
The best thing that's happened to the party, and I would say probably one of the best things that Donald Trump ever did, is he put an end to the Clinton dynasty that was not helping the party, that was kind of trapped in the past. After all, why was she running? What did she stand for? The most pathetic part of the leaks were the internal memos where she kept demanding of her staff to come up with a message. What is her message? You're approaching 70 years old, you've been running for a decade, and you don't know why you're running? She never knew why she was running. It was her turn. It was like that famous moment in the late 70s when Teddy Kennedy was running for president, and Roger Mudd asked him, why are you running? And he couldn't answer. The answer was, because I'm supposed to. That was what, I'm supposed to, I'm entitled to, combination of. But she didn't care. Sanders had a message. He had a message for America. He had a political theory for all of his weirdness and, the fact that socialism isn't exactly a good fit in America. But there was substance. There was none there. And I think in the end, that's sort of what defeated her. There was no rationale for her run. And the Democratic Party suffered being trapped by the Clinton machine, Clinton dominance. Nobody would rise. There were no serious candidates to challenge her, which should have happened. But she cleared the field. She had all the money. She had the official backing. She had the name. She had the association with the president looked at in some ways fondly, at least by Democrats. And that wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough. Boy, what a sad story. What a sad story.
I think we should have, I don't want to be cynical about this, but really she ought to just let it sit for a while and let people appreciate her good qualities.
I don't think that's cynical at all. I think it's a really wise piece of advice. I doubt she'll listen, but she should. Charles Krauthammer, thank you.
My pleasure.
Even many in the press think Hillary Clinton's claims have gone too far. Up next, we'll talk to someone who agrees with her. Explanation for why she lost. Also, another man is being fingered as a key figure in the FBI probe of the Russian connection. That man dares to join us just ahead. Well, the press has spent months encouraging the story that Russia somehow hacked the U.S. election, so it really means something if even reporters are now put off by Hillary Clinton's recent statements to that effect. Today, NBC News reporter Andrea Mitchell said that Clinton's claims about that are not backed by evidence.
She's drawing a conspiracy theory. She doesn't have the evidence, but she is obviously hoping that this is that Robert Mueller and what the congressional committees could do. She's also not blaming herself.
Richard Goodstein is a Democratic strategist and a former advisor to Hillary Clinton. He agrees with Clinton that her defeat was due to, quote, outside forces. It is great to see you tonight. Not easy to find someone who will defend this. So since I know you know a lot of the subject, Mrs. Clinton yesterday referred to Macedonian operatives that played a key role in her defeat. Can you explain the role of Macedonian operatives in her loss?
Let me just say one thing. We acknowledge tragedies in a show like this that happened earlier in the day. I think pulling out of this climate deal was a tragedy for future generations and for the economy. Just to ask the CEOs of Dow and GE and Apple and others. I know that's not what this segment is about.
But you're in mourning. But I bet if I asked you what was in the Paris Agreement, you wouldn't know.
No, actually, I'm one of the few people you have sitting at this table.
Okay, that makes you nearly unique. But let's get back to the question of the Macedonian, the secret Who were the Macedonians?
Look. What she was talking about, and which is well documented, it's why 17 intelligence agencies said, without qualification, that the Russians were behind the subversion of the elections.
But she's talking about the Macedonians. Who were these Macedonians? Hillary Clinton tried to become president 6 months ago. And yesterday on live TV with Kara Swisher, she said the Macedonians did this, these agents. Who were they?
I think we saw reports of that as well. They were also working in cahoots with the Russians and WikiLeaks. Look,
how does she know that?
What we know are the facts. The facts are that a couple days before the Democratic Convention, WikiLeaks drops these emails that are very damaging to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, creating a little bit of chaos there. We know that Roger Stone boasts about his conversations with Assange, WikiLeaks, and boasts about how Podesta is going to be in the barrel. And then the hour after Access Hollywood, as Hillary said yesterday, the Podesta emails get dropped and dropped and dropped. And Dick Cheney called it an act of war. So your beef is not with me.
Was Dick Cheney involved in the Macedonians?
Well, I'm just saying, your beef is with, if you don't agree with that, you have a complaint with him, not so much with me.
I don't think Dick Cheney is arguing that the Macedonians stole the election from Hillary Clinton, but she is arguing that. And I have to be honest with you, you've been around a long time. I know a ton of Democrats here in Washington. I don't know one of them who isn't shocked by what Hillary Clinton said yesterday, attacking the Democratic Party, attacking Barack Obama's DNC, when she had twice the money of Donald Trump. That's not speculation, it's a fact. When the sitting president of the United States put everything on the line for her, and she attacks, in effect, Barack Obama yesterday. I mean, far be it for me to defend Obama, but that's insane. He really tried hard to get her elected, and he failed. And she's attacking him now.
Look, the fact that Obama was criticized for not being more hands-on about the DNC. Look, Charles just said what a horrible, horrible candidate Hillary was. This horrible candidate got 3 million more votes than this phenom, Donald Trump, and got more primary votes than Barack Obama.
But hold on. She lost, and there are a lot of reasons why. But to turn around and blame the Democratic Party, which was all in for Hillary Clinton, and the DNC, even her former aide, Patty Sleaze Doyle, yesterday said, come on now, this is a horrible thing to do. As a Democrat, how can you defend that?
Look, her principal beef is with Comey. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the polls...
I thought it was with the Russians.
She's up, well, she is too. The principal one is with Comey. If you look at the polls...
But what about sexism?
The day of the Comey letter, she's up 6, and by the time all the dust settles, every single morning for the next week, the mainstream media is talking about the Comey letter, and undecideds, as a result, break for Trump in those few swing states.
I've heard the theory. What did she do wrong, though? She said, I take responsibility for what I did wrong, but I never heard what exactly she did wrong. How did she mess up? She must be culpable in this, too. She lost her second election in a row. So what specifically did she do wrong?
I think what she would say is, if she had to do all over again from a messaging standpoint, she would say something along the lines of, I know how to create 22 million new jobs. I was in the White House when that happened. And so this business about what Trump said about creating jobs would be an illusion.
Because my husband did it.
Well, because she was there and she knew, as opposed to, look, we now have somebody who doesn't really know that Frederick Douglass is not alive. He thinks that Andrew Jackson was around for the Civil War.
And he won. So I guess what you're saying is, if only she'd had a different message, but isn't the message the same as the campaign?
Look,
that entire campaign is built around a message. So you're conceding that she had the wrong message. That's like saying the car's great, it just has no engine.
No, because the fact is, the message was great until the Comey letter. Again, she was up 6 points.
What was the message before that?
She was up 6 points, which was more than Obama was up 10 days out before.
I covered it. I can't remember. What was the message before the Comey letter?
Well, she was basically saying to the middle class, with help that you're going to get, whether it's through education or research and development or job training and all the things, child care. All the things that, frankly, we've seen Congress, frankly, say no to.
So I just want to be totally clear. So what she did wrong, because this is a key question. What did she do wrong? She said herself she did. She had this great message that you couldn't explain very well.
I'm sorry you didn't like it.
But she should have changed it.
It was working until the Comey letter.
She should have changed it to something else after the Comey letter. She should have changed her message after the Comey letter, but she didn't? Is that what she did wrong?
I'm saying that the Comey letter was so serious. There were 50-fold more
what should
research.
She have done?
There were 50-fold more searches for Clinton FBI after the Comey letter. There was a big distraction. So you can laugh, Tucker. But again, the message was working. She would have been seen as a genius.
I get it.
But Dessa would be a genius.
Look, I think Comey hurt her. I've said that 100 times on this show. I just want to know what she did wrong, and neither you nor she can give me a clear account of it.
I'm telling you.
And that's very telling.
The message should have been more about jobs and less kind of, frankly, stronger together. It would just be about jobs. And I think she had a credible case because when she was living in the White House, 22 million jobs were created.
Why didn't she say it?
I think when you have her on the show, you'll have to ask her.
Because if you can't get your message right, then why would we elect you president?
Oh, because she had the competence, the core competence that we now pray for, that we pray for in this country.
She seemed kind of nuts, actually, yesterday and today. But whatever. That's just my view.
Okay.
It was great to see you. Thank you for that.
Thanks for having me back.
Hillary Clinton isn't the only one determined to expand the Russia conspiracy. Now, unnamed sources, apparently from within the U.S. intelligence community, are calling Nigel Farage a person of interest, whatever that means, in the FBI probe of the Trump campaign. Could he be a Russian spy too? Thankfully, he's agreed to leave his handlers behind and join us in moments to answer that question. Stay tuned. Russia conspiracy grows more vast and complex with every passing day. I personally found a Macedonian hiding under my bed just last night, and that's just me, one man. Hillary Clinton isn't standing alone with her tinfoil hat anymore. She's in a club that now includes the majority of registered Democrats. A new poll by The Economist and YouGov finds that 59% of Democrats, 59%, believe that Russians literally rigged vote tallies to hand the fall election to Donald Trump. Something for which there's no evidence at all, and nobody who is sane is claiming that. Now, another politician is being accused of being a Putin plant the whole time. Leaks from, of course, unnamed sources, but probably from within the U.S. intel community, say Brexit advocate Nigel Farage is a, quote, person of interest in the probe for connections between Trump's campaign and the Russian government. Nigel Farage joins us tonight to answer a very simple question. Are you now, or have you ever been, an agent of the Putin government, Nigel Farage?
No, I haven't. And I have to say, if ever there was a case of fake news, this is it. What they've done is they've tried to join the dots together. I was involved with Brexit. I was involved with the Trump campaign. I was involved with upsetting their little world in 2016. Therefore, I must somehow be associated with the Russians. It is total and utter hysterical nonsense.
It's a little more than that, though, because this arose in the Guardian newspaper, which is very left-wing, but it does journalism. Yep. And they are claiming that sources whom they imply are in the U.S. government are saying this. Now, I have no doubt that it's untrue, it's libel, but it also suggests that people in the U.S. government are trying to hurt you in a significant way. Does that bother you?
Well, I just don't believe it, and I think sources, look, it could be anybody. They've tried to imply that I'm a person of interest. Clearly, they've rung up the FBI, who haven't given them an answer either way, and I would be very surprised if I was a person of interest, and I'll tell you why. I've never been to Russia. I've never done business in Russia. I have literally no political connections with Russia whatsoever. The whole thing is a fantasy from people who cannot accept the fact they lost badly last year.
Now, have you ever passed microfilm in a public park to a Russian agent? Or, and this is an obvious question, what about Macedonia? Do you have any connections to secret agents in Macedonia who changed vote totals here?
I only wish I had, because life would be so much more exciting, but I'm afraid not guilty on both questions.
But I guess, we're laughing about this because it is ludicrous. I mean, it's ludicrous, the definition of ludicrous. But it's also damaging to accuse people in public, even anonymously, of a reputation-destroying act like collaborating with an authoritarian government such as Putin's. We've seen a lot of this recently. I don't know if they have ever had political witch hunts in Great Britain, but we have here, and this looks like one of them to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually far bigger than anything I've seen in Britain. I mean, certainly since Brexit, they've tried to apportion blame, they've tried to make out the sort of a network of hate, but they haven't really got very far with it. My concern with this one is that it's actually gaining some traction in the USA amongst a lot of Democrats who are beginning to believe this constant stream of rubbish that has been put out about the Russian conspiracy. The difficulty is, you know, put yourself in my shoes, just what do you do when the Guardian newspaper publishes a story like this? How on earth do you disprove them? How on earth can you make them reveal their sources? And frankly, without going to the High Court and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and spending months of your life on it, it's very, very difficult.
So what did you do? How did you respond to this?
Well, I did say to the British media that I apologise for taking a long time to answer it. I was so busy laughing when I read the article. It is frankly utter nonsense, and I think, in my case, in 48 hours, this will blow over.
Well, you have a much better sense of humor than I do, and I salute you for that, I have to say. A calmness and an amused detachment that I envy. Nigel Farage, you are being wronged, and you're nice to come on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we want to bring you tonight a new segment of Drugged, which is our ongoing look at the horrifying opioid crisis gripping the United States, mostly outside the major cities. In previous segments, we told you about the major role that the OxyContin creator Purdue Pharma and other drug companies have played in the wide acceptance and the distribution of highly addictive painkillers. They argued for both of those, and they worked with terrible consequences. Now, the Attorney General of Ohio, Mike DeWine, wants to take them to task for that. His state is suing Purdue Pharma and 4 other drug companies, accusing them of responsibility in creating a drug epidemic that's killed more Ohioans so far than the Vietnam War did. Attorney General Mike DeWine joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for joining us. So what's the essence of your case against Purdue Pharma and the other 4 companies here?
You know, Tucker, the essence of our case is this. Historically, these pain meds were used for end-of-life situations. Someone has cancer, they're dying of cancer. They were also used for someone has a wisdom tooth out, they might take 1 or 2. But beginning in the late 90s, what the drug companies did in a very concerted way, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to do this, they tried to sell doctors first of all. And the doctors that they were targeting were not really the pain specialists. They were the general practitioners, the family doctors that you and I would go to. And they targeted them, and they wanted them to believe and told them that this medication was not very addictive. They told them that it was very, very appropriate for someone who has long-term pain, chronic pain. And they were very, very successful. In fact, not only did they convince doctors, they convinced the public. Right. And they really, if I could say this, turned the culture. And so what we're saying in Ohio, and you've reported so very well, and thank you for doing it, talking about this problem. You've reported what's been going on in Ohio. I mean, we've just been devastated. And it's not just the number of people who die. We think we're losing 10 or 12 a day, but it's the kids, it's the children's services that are overflowing with foster kids. We think, 50% of all the foster kids in Ohio today, the kids who are in foster care, are there because one or both parents are drug addicts.
It's shocking. I mean, it's an overwhelming epidemic in its scale. So I guess the key question is, did Purdue Pharma and these other companies know that the drugs they were selling were addictive? And I guess the obvious question is, how could they not know? How could you not know that?
Well, I think that's right. How could they not know? And, they went to great expense, and you'll have to hand it to them. They were very, very successful in changing the culture. And they did it in some of the same ways, frankly, that we'd seen before with tobacco. I mean, the one thing that stands out is they would fund kind of a third party who supposedly was unbiased, and they would come out with reports that were saying, yes, this is just, it's not very addictive. They would employ doctors, key opinion makers in the community. They would give them slides, they would give them talking points, and they would pay them. And the doctors, I'm sure, believed that what they were saying was true. I mean, the pharmaceutical company who had done the research on it was telling them that. So they believed that. They even came up with a thing that they called pseudo-addiction. And so when someone was showing all the signs of addiction, and the doctor was treating that person, Purdue Pharma and the other ones would basically say, oh no, that's pseudo-addiction, and that what you really need to do is there's not enough pain pills being prescribed. You have to go and prescribe more. You just haven't hit to the point. So, you know, they just really misled the American people.
Do you have evidence that it wasn't an honest mistake?
Well, here's one thing that I think is interesting. You know, when we all get our prescriptions, you open it up and there's all this fine print, and there's a long, you know, number of different pages in there. If you compared what was in those pages, compared with what they were actually telling doctors and in the glossy folders and the advertising, two different things. You would find some of the more realistic, you know, examples and problems that were connected to this when you read the fine print. But how many people actually go read that fine print? I mean, you know, you look at it, and I think anybody over 40, you know, would have to take a magnifying glass to read it. So they're saying one thing that was true, but in their marketing, no, it was simply not true. Look, all this is going to go to court. I have to play the lawyer and say, you know, we believe, Tucker, this is what the evidence will show. Right. But, you know, obviously, we spent a long time looking at this. We would not have filed this unless we thought the evidence will clearly show this, and that we can convince a jury in the state of Ohio that this is true.
So many lives have been destroyed, and I think we're going to put an iconic picture on the screen of grandparents, there you go, passed out, OD'd on opiates, grandkids in the back, and nobody has been held accountable for this. We'll be following this story closely. Mr. Attorney General, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tucker.
Well, Steve Hilton is getting a brand new show here on the Fox News Channel. It starts next Sunday, but you can see him in the next segment if you stay tuned, and we hope you will. Time now for the Friend Zone. We bring one of our pals from the network onto the show. Tonight is Steve Hilton. He's about to become the newest host on this channel. His program is called The Next Revolution with Steve Hilton. It's airing for the first time Sunday at 9 p.m., and he joins us now. Steve, first of all, congratulations. This is awesome. I'm going to watch the show every Sunday night. You're doing it from Los Angeles. What is that like? And are you taking any flack from your neighbors who maybe don't agree with you?
Yeah, lots of flack. Thank you, Tucker, for giving me the chance to talk about it. But before we get into it, I have a very important Kofifi update for you. So last night on your show, you unleashed some wild speculation that the president's tweet, Kofifi, was actually Hungarian. Now, my parents are Hungarian. I speak Hungarian. I can confirm that Kofifi is not Hungarian.
It's funny. I got an email from Charlie Gogolak, who's a friend of mine, one of the great place kickers in football history, who's Hungarian, who said, not Hungarian. I think it's finished now.
There you are.
Whatever. Whatever. So, what's the show about?
So, what I really want the show to be about is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. But someone got there first. So we can't do that. But it's very much in line with the way you see the world, Tucker. We're going to be looking at the failures of the elitist policies that we've seen for decades now from governments all over the world, from different parties that have really let people down, especially working people. And we're going to be setting out a positive agenda for changes that will actually help people in their daily lives. So I'm calling it positive populism. That's the idea.
So I guess it's just a broader question here, but the hysteria coming from the people in charge recently is so intense. Is that because they feel their grip on power slipping, or they're becoming more delusional, or what is going on with those people?
I think that's exactly right. They've had it their way for so long. You've had the elites in business and in government. They've centralized power. You've got corporations getting bigger and bigger, operating on a global scale, unaccountable to the people that work for them or that they serve. Same is happening with government, these multinational institutions. And they finally see the people have had enough of it. And in vote after vote, you saw it with Brexit, you saw it here with Donald Trump last year. The people are trying to carry out this revolution. That's why we've called it the next revolution. We want to explain that populist movement and then look at what's coming next, what might be coming next and what should be coming next to really put power back in people's hands.
Steve Hilton, one of the smartest people I know and one of the best explainers. It's going to be great. The show is The Next Revolution this Sunday and every Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Steve, thanks a lot for that. We'll be right back.